Hello there, algebra students. This is Mr. Kashi speaking. With this video, we're going to be going through some examples for 10-6 Day 2. We're going to be factoring some quadratic expressions. This first one is going to be exactly like the ones that we did in our last video, and then we're going to be moving on to factoring some things with multiple variables, which is just a little extra step, nothing huge. So here we have n squared minus 2n minus 35, and this is written in standard form. We want to write it in factored form. So the first thing is we're going to create our diamond. We're going to put negative 35 up here, and we're going to have negative 2 down here. So we have to find two factors that multiply to negative 35 and add to negative 2. And hopefully if you look at your factor sheet for number 35, we have 5 and 7. And what I do is I just write 5 and 7 right here, and then I take a look and say, okay, how are they going to add up to negative 2? Well, the only way it's going to be negative 2 is if I make that 7 negative. And so that's one thing that I want to make sure everybody knows, is that when this is a negative number, the larger factor is negative. It's kind of the hardest thing to pick up on when we're choosing our factors. So here we have 5 times negative 7 will give us a negative 35. 5 plus negative 7 gives us a negative 2. So then we can come over here, write it in factored form. We have n plus 5, n minus 7. And that's all we're doing, is we're taking something from standard form and writing it in factored form. Have a handful more examples. Now we're going to be adding in another variable, and I know this looks different, but really it's the same process. And what I want to do is I just want to cross out that second variable, but we can't forget about it. We're going to cross it out for now. We're going to create our diamond. We have negative 15, and then we have a positive 2. So we have to multiply to negative 15. We have to add to 2. Looking at our factor sheet, for factors of 15, we have 3 and 5, and they're 2 away from each other. And in this case, the larger factor is positive, so we have to make that a negative. So here we have larger factor is positive, or how I say it is, which one is going to win? Right? Do I want the positives or negatives to win? Well, the positives are going to win in this case by 2, so the larger factor has to be positive. And the last example, the negatives won by, so you'd have to make the larger factor negative. So now, this is where you have to be a little bit careful. We're going to write our factored form over here. So we have x minus 3, but I'm going to leave a space right behind that 3. And then here we would have x plus 5, and I'm going to leave another space, because what I'm going to use with that space is I'm just going to, whatever that variable is that we used before, that we crossed out, we're just going to write it right behind those numbers right there. And that would be your final factored form for that problem. So really, there is nothing different. Just forget about the second variable at first, and then just write it back into your answer, making sure that you're leaving space there. So here we'll go through a couple more. Okay, create our diamond. We have negative 39, and we have a positive 10. Looking at our factor sheet, oh, sorry, we should probably cross these out first. Okay, looking at our factor sheet, we have 3 and 13. In this case, we know that the positives win, so we're going to make the smaller number negative. So this would mean that the larger factor is positive. Okay, because we're multiplying to 39, adding to 10. We have to make sure that the larger factor is positive. So here, once again, we're going to go a minus 3, but leave some space. And then we're going to have a plus 13 and leave some space, because we're going to be adding in that b in behind both of those for our final answer. Okay, so we have a minus 3b times a plus 13b for our factored answer there. All right. Another example here. Crossing out our second variable for now. Creating our diamond. we have negative 51, and we have negative 14. So we have to multiply to negative 51, we have to add to negative 14. So in our factor our factor sheet, if we look at 51, we have 3 and 17. And this tells us that our larger factor is negative. So this means that the negative has to go over there because the negatives have to win by 14. And then obviously 3 times negative 17 will give us a negative 51. So come over here, write it in factored form. We have x plus 3, leave a space, x minus 17, leave a space. And then here we're just writing in that second variable that we left out in the first place. So you have x plus 3y, x minus 17y would be your final factored answer for that problem. And then these were all factoring problems that were determining which factor is larger. I didn't want us to get into bad habits, so I wanted to make sure that we did one like this. So we're still crossing out the second variable, right? And we have 22 and 13. And if you take a look at 22, we have to multiply to 22. We have to add to 13. The factors that we're going to use are 2 and 11. So we have 2 and 11. And here, we're not talking about which one's a larger factor. Here, we're just adding the factors to get now they both stay positive, right? 2 plus 11 gives us 13. So here we would have x plus 2, leave a space. X plus 11, leave a space. And then you're adding in your y's afterwards. So I just wanted to make sure that, we're not always going to find out a larger factor is negative or a larger factor is positive. Sometimes we're just adding the factors together. That's all we're doing. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting into bad habits there. But hopefully these examples helped, and good luck on your assignment.